10 years old?
Yes.
He doesn't look 10. He looks pretty good.
I know. I feel like he looks pretty good.
My Pittie, she's 15.
Okay.
And her age is starting to catch up to her, like her hind legs.
15 is good.
Yeah, her hind legs aren't working as well as they used to, and she's starting to show it in the face, but he's looking pretty good.
Yeah, I know.
So I believe he had listed like leash reactivity. Is that
so
correct?
dog reactivity.
Okay.
So he's great with people, good with kids, but just always, he was rescued from like, they were like breeding for dog fighting.
Okay.
So I don't know if he was ever, I don't think he was ever fought, but he was definitely like, the whole litter was being trained for aggression.
I see.
For dogs.
Sure.
So he's never been good with dogs, but until he knows the dog, and that's like an important point, because once he's like established trust, and it usually takes like less than an hour, he's the most gentle dog with other dogs.
Okay. so he has friends.
Yeah. My parents have 8 dogs.
Okay.
And Christmas time, he's very, he's possessive on toys with other dogs, so as long as toys are out of the mix, he's good.
Okay.
But yeah, if we were to walk up like right now on the street with a dog on a leash, he'd bark at them and go pretty bananas.
Has he ever met a dog while in that state, or do you just always like? Just
I always go like I cross the road, like I don't do meat. I just don't put him in that position.
Sure. Okay. And then you also need boarding services?
Yeah, sorry, he's dying over the toys because he doesn't get stuffies at home because he tears them up.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, looking for boarding. So I had a place that like was decent that I live nearby, but he just had an incident where I specifically said like he can't have like toys because he eats, like he'll ingest toys when he tears them up. And they did, and he just had $10,000 worth of surgery.
Wow. So, did they have to remove any of his intestine?
Yeah. Shh. So, and it's not a very structured place. Like, they do like daycares during the day. So I just was really attracted to the fact that you guys, one, I actually love doing training with him just because I think it like helps bond us and, just having something to do with him. But I also just wanted like a boarding facility that like kind of specializes in like, dogs that have reactivity.
Sure. I know, I see you. Yeah. So you were just doing like a Google search and then just kind of looking at your options?
Yeah, I think I looked up like boarding facilities for reactive dogs.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we had all sorts of dogs. We have dogs like him, dog reactive, we have dog aggression, we have human reactive, human aggressive, fear, nervousness, anxiety. We also have the happy-go-lucky dogs. We have everything. Weekends are typically slower. Right now we have about 20 dogs with us, but it's quiet here. So our kennel room is actually just behind that brick wall. Okay. That would be our activity room. My employee's on break right now, so all the dogs are put away. Okay. So like right now he barked or rumbled. Yeah. And then you heard her bark in the background because that dog's like, well, there's a new dog here. Yeah. So that's but otherwise it's fairly quiet here. Okay. So it's not that dogs that never bark. Yeah. It's not incessant barking. Yeah. Which is what a lot of places it's usually like. Yeah. Barking is usually overstimulation. They're playing obviously in some respects, but then also there's just the stress barking. Yeah. Because it's just constant kind of chaos and it just feeds off of each other. Yeah. Whereas here we don't have that, so dogs will be playing and you're like, there's dogs playing here. Like, yeah. But it's structured play. Right. They're not allowed to go above a 5. That's what I like to tell people because that's typically when scuffles happen. Yeah. The energy becomes too intense and then there's like a spat, what have you. Yeah. And spats do happen. Yeah. They just happen very infrequently and they are dissipated almost immediately where like nothing happens, But when you have 8 to 12 dogs in a group, hour after hour, 365 days a year, at some point, something's going to happen. Yeah. But it's so regulated that it's really infrequent. Yeah. So, when doing the consultation form and everything, did you read on how he trained, the methods that we use, the tools that we use?
I don't recall, no.
Okay. So I do remote collar and prong collar.
Oh yeah, sorry, I did read that. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Do you have any insight in remote collar of your own?
I've used it in the past. Okay.
With him?
Yeah, I used it for barking.
I see. Was it like a bark collar or was it one that you controlled? It was a bark collar,
but like it had vibrate and settings all the way up to like a minimal shock. Mm-hmm.
It's usually 1 through 10.
I didn't need the shock because the vibrate scares the shit out of them. So.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of dogs react more to the vibration because it's just a static sensation,
Yeah.
right? And it's very unnatural for them.
Yeah.
Whereas with the stimulation or the shock, e-collar is a little bit different because it's meant to deter barking as quickly as possible. So the way it's delivered, it's a little bit harsher, even at a 1.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas with e-collar, which we use for training, it's the same technology. We have 127 respective levels as opposed to 10 levels.
Okay.
So 127 and 10 would be the same, but we just have 117 more individual
Got it.
settings to
Okay.
really fine tune it.
Yeah.
So if you felt a 1 on an actual e-collar versus a bark collar, they're going to feel drastically different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because of those jumps.
Yeah.
Same thing with like electronic fences. They operate the same. There's usually about 10 settings because the intention is to prevent the dog from escaping. Because if the dog escapes, they get hit by a car, they run away, they get lost, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's really trying to deter that behavior. So that's why it's not as refined because we're really not caring about how does the dog feel about escaping the yard. We just really want to deter that behavior.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the technology itself, man, you're a wiggly guy.
He's just
The
he's dying to say hi.
is a muscle stimulator.
Yeah.
So have you ever been to a chiropractor or physical therapist?
Yeah.
Have you had the TENS therapy where it moves the muscle? So that's essentially what an e-collar is.
Okay.
It's just a muscle stimulator. The word shock comes from, in the dog training world, there's a lot of drama.
Yeah.
There's trainers that do positive only, and then there's trainers like myself that do a mixture of everything. We do positive and negative, right?
Yeah.
So the positive only world, there's some fronts where it's like, they use word like shock, torture, pain, to deter you because no one wants to shock their dog.
Yeah.
Right? No one wants to electrocute their dog. When in reality, the technology itself is actually used on humans, but it's also just a muscle stimulator, right?
Okay.
So it's not like sticking your finger in an outlet or anything like that. It's electric, but not electricity, is what I tell people.
Yeah.
It's electric because it is signals. That's what causes the muscles to move, but it's not a current running through the dog's body.
Got it.
And the reason why I use this tool is that, in my opinion, I've been doing this for 15 years. It's the best training tool there is. One, because I can refine it. It's 127 respective settings, right? So, for example, we have a Bernese right now for a board and train. I train her as a puppy as well. I trained the previous dog as well. She's very sweet, okay? Super sweet. And her number is 90 out of 127.
Wow.
Okay. We have another board and train who's a Rottie. Sweet dog, nervous dog. Her number is 35. Okay, so someone would look at the Rottie and go like, "Oh, that dog's gonna have a big number because it's a tough dog." And then the Bernese, "Oh, it's a sweet dog. She's gonna be low." It's the complete opposite,
exactly.
right? So, but that's what I help you figure out, or help my clients figure out, depending on what kind of program they're doing. I go, this is the settings for your specific dog, right? And then we also have different environments. So like we could be, if you're at a dog park versus inside the home. If you're in this room versus a room with like 6 other people and their dogs, right? Is depending on the setting, the number may be different.
Right.
So it allows you to just kind of adjust appropriately.
Yeah.
With tools like the prong collar, which is the spiky looking collar, right? I'm sure you're familiar.
Yep.
A great tool, but I don't look to it for training right away. I may incorporate it if needed.
Yeah.
So, for example, the Rottie. First, I just did remote collar, but she's such a, she really just hones in when she's trying to pull. As I look at that and go, okay, the client's most likely going to need some additional leverage to help them to compensate for that. The Bernese, however, bigger than the Rottie, is not on the prong collar because even though her number is higher, she doesn't need the prong, right? So it's a case-by-case basis.
I get it.
A lot of trainers would like train a dog on a prong, but I go, if e-collar does what a prong can do, but better, then why would I even just use the prong, right?
Exactly.
So, but they also can work very well together. Every case is different. I had a young lady, she lived in Bucktown. She had a 140-pound, 50-ish pound Great Dane who was leash reactive. And she herself was probably 100 pounds soaking wet. And she was like 5 foot tall.
Yeah.
So for her, I go, you're going to need a prong collar and an e-collar because I have to compensate for that size difference, So prong collar is typically incorporated. I don't look at it as a training tool isolated. Like I don't do a training program only for prong. I do everything on remote because I know with remote I can get off-leash reliability, I can get off-leash recall, we can correct behaviors very easily. Also, in cases like if we put a prong on a dog with has reactivity, if I'm working with the couple and one person can correct the dog firm enough, but the other person cannot, now we have a discrepancy. Right? So the dog will behave well, obviously, with the person who can correct well, whereas the other person, they're like, you don't know what you're doing, right? E-collar removes that factor.
Okay.
Because if one of them presses the button at 40 and the other one presses the button at 40, it's the same sensation across the board, and it just gives me consistency. Okay.
Okay.
So, question on any of that stuff?
Nope.
When did you use the remote collar for him?
Years ago, I want to say like at least 5. I just had I lived in a place that had a very sensitive neighbor about barking, so now I don't. So.
Hey, was this something you got on your own, or were you working with a professional? Okay, so.
Yeah, no, I think I got a pet safe one.
I see.
Yeah.
Because I know you said he freaked out with the vibration.
Yeah. Well, just sorry, I shouldn't say freaked out, but he's the vibration was enough. He was like, oh, what is that, and would stop.
Did his barking ever stop completely? Or did you find yourself having to vibrate?
He's not a super barky dog unless he hears new noises. And if he hears dogs barking, he'll bark.
I see.
Yeah.
And is your main goal really just the leash reactivity?
Yeah, and honestly, just the leash reactivity, and just if there's I guess that's the same thing, dog in the distance, how do I just make sure that he's just remaining to be focused on me? Because I don't think I'm ever going to get the leash reactivity out of him. He's 10. I've seen a couple of trainers about it, and not to say that it can't happen, but it's I feel like it's always going to be in him. So how do I kind of make the best of it?
I see. So leash reactivity can be squashed.
Okay.
Okay, when we're using the appropriate tools with appropriate methods.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna. Your case is a little nuanced simply because of his age. Okay, and it's not you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's a myth. That's just the saying. Any dog can be taught something. Now, are there tricks that an older dog can't do? Probably, right? But this isn't about tricks. This is simply just teaching him when you see a dog, don't bark at it, right? So that's more so a rule if you do this behavior, there'll be a consequence. And I believe even for people at any age, you can learn, oh, I don't want to do that because there's a negative consequence. That's how that stuff works, right? So his age and then his breed.
Yeah.
I love Pitties. I have a Pittie, as you know.
Yep.
You said he came from a dog breeding kind of background, right? So one thing that I tell my Pittie owners or my power breed owners is, Pitties were bred for fighting, right? Yeah. So in order for a Pittie to be successful in the ring, they have to tolerate pain, right, and discomfort.
Yeah.
E-collar is pain and discomfort on a varying degree, right?
Yeah.
So we have 127 levels. And this is just me doing emotional and mental prep for you. I've seen the easiest cases. I've seen the most difficult cases, right?
Yeah.
So I always kind of paint things worst case scenario for the owner. And if the owner goes, okay, I can do that, then I go, I can help you. Because I also get owners that go, I can't do that. Then I go, then I may not be able to help you because if we end up in a worst case scenario, if you're telling me I can't do that, then that's where my limitation is. Because I'll get it done. But if you can't get it done, then the dog learns. Well, when Jesse's here, this will happen.
Right.
When Jesse's not here, it won't happen. So therefore, why should I stop the behavior if he's absent,
100%.
right? And he could be the most sensitive dog ever. I don't know. It's just kind of just letting you know. So when it comes to leash reactivity, the first thing that we cover, I know, is the heel command, okay, which helps address leash pulling. Leash pulling, leash reactivity, 2 most common things that I deal with, okay? So right off the bat, if we're doing in-person training, it's the first thing that we cover. So you leave going, great, I'm starting on the thing that's already going to help what my goal is, right? We do class 1. You show up, we do a few exercises, I give you your homework. You come back, you would give me feedback, okay? And you might go, hey, Jesse, 50% of his reactivity is done, 80% is done, 10% is done, 0% is done, right? Based upon what you tell me, I then know what I need to do next, okay? So you give me feedback, we work on class 2, which is the second half of heel, okay? We make some tweaks on the collar, and I go rinse and repeat, okay? You come back, you know what, Jesse, it's the same, it's still only a 20% difference, where he's better, this and that, and I go, okay, no problem. I'm gonna bring a dog out now, and we're gonna do a controlled context where we're gonna work through the reactivity, okay, to set the foundation. So, and then it's rinse and repeat, okay? The only time I don't get reactivity done is when the owner doesn't follow through, okay? So let's say worst case scenario, as I go, okay, even though he's a 10-year-old guy, his reactivity, maybe it is really bad, right? So if his reactivity is up there, then my collar is most likely gonna be up there.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe a little bit higher, because we always have to match the dog, if not be higher, to get them to stop.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why with prong collar, let's say his reactivity is at a 15, but the harshest correction I can do is only a 10. 10 will never match 15.
Right.
Right. So that's why we're stuck.
Yep.
With the e-collar, I'm not worried about that. I know I can match it. Okay. So let's say his number is 90 out of 127 before he stops the reactivity. Okay. The next thing is he's going to be most likely very stressed out. Okay. One, because of the sensation of the collar.
Yeah.
I've learned the older a dog is, when they do the training, it can still be done, but because they've gone so long without feeling this kind of sensation, it's completely new to them, they tend to stress out quite a bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's already a bit of a stressy guy.
So that's just kind of part of the process. So then where the trickiness is, and this is of course just the owner, if the owner goes, well, I feel bad because my dog is 10 and I'm having to correct them at 90 to stop this behavior, right?
Yeah.
Because the other thing is, if he's been doing it for 10 years, that's the other thing that we're trying to counter.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying we're not going to get it done. I can get it done. I'm just saying we might be kind of in this extreme because of these factors. Okay.
Yep, I get it.
But it's like ripping a Band-Aid. If the client just commits, you know, they come back the next week and they're like, hey, Jesse, like 80% better. I go, great, right? So we got a chunk of the stuff done.
Yeah.
What holds people back is they try to address the problem as nicely as possible. So they're keeping a dog in the limbo as opposed to just ripping off that Band-Aid and just getting it done. I go, I understand what you're doing because you're trying to do it on behalf of the dog, but you're really just prolonging this process, which is, in my opinion, making it worse for the dog.
Right.
If I just come in and I go, all right, this is what I need to do, and I get it done, and it just takes a week versus trying to do it at a lower number, which is not working, and just stretches out the process, and then we finally hit a point where like, all right, I'm going to do 90.
Yeah.
I was like, you should have just did it from the get-go. We would already be done with this.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yep. Yep.
So the reason why reactivity is so simple is because it's just don't do that. I don't care how he feels about the dog on the street, right? I care how he feels about dogs that he would meet, like a friend's dog or a family member's dog, right? And you said he already does well, right? And then the other positive you'd most likely see is that his turnaround time will most likely be quicker. Because if we're already correcting like this negative behavior, and then like you go meet up with the friend, his process would be quicker because there's not going to be that initial tension anymore. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does.
It should be a little bit more streamlined. So you're like, oh, he went from taking an hour to taking 15 minutes, or you know, whatever that process may be. And I also have a means of how we correctly introduce a dog to another dog.
Oh, great.
That I can help teach you as well, which helps us break the ice and also just progress things a bit more quickly.
That would be awesome because I have one of my best friends has 2 labs. I just moved back to Chicago.
Okay.
And we haven't introduced our dogs yet.
Sure.
Just because of mine.
Yeah. So what I've done with clients in the past is, one, we'll either use a dog that we have here, and or if they have a friend who has a dog, they'll show up and we'll do the class together. Yeah. And then what's nice about it is you would repeat the exercise with that friend, but it's already someone you're going to be meeting anyways.
Right.
So as opposed to we do it with a completely different dog. Yeah. And then you have to do it with another different dog. Yeah. So if we already do it with your friend's dogs, it's nice because now you have a baseline to kind of jump off of when you do it on your own. Yeah. Okay. Yep. And it's very simple. I've kind of cut out all the BS. And I know what works and what doesn't work. And I know what's easy for clients to pick up on. And I know there's some stuff that's a little complicated. But as long as you have common sense and logic, like it's pretty straightforward. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Question on any of that stuff? Nope. So the only thing I just anticipate, of course, is stress because he's an older guy. Yeah. Potentially a high number because he's a Pittie. Yeah. Okay. But once you get all that out the way, it's pretty straightforward. I don't pick the number, your dog picks the number. So if he does great at 18 out of 127, then we're at 18 at 127, right? Yeah. But if that's not working, we just continue to work our way up little by little, low to high, and eventually we find the number. Right. I have had some cases, many of them Pittie cases, and if not a Pittie, power freed case. Man, you're a wiggly guy. I know. So for example, there was a pit that I trained, her name was Psylocke. She had leash reactivity. It took me about 5 classes before we squashed the reactivity. We ended up having to go to max power, okay, to correct every instance of reactivity. And I told the owner, do this for 2 weeks and then come back. They did that. Everything was great. Reactivity stopped, okay? We did some more classes because they did more advanced training. They did off-leash type stuff. And I said, take a month before you come back for your next class, longer if needed, okay? They didn't take about 2 to 3 months. They come back, and she's like, hey, Jesse, obedience has been great. However, she's reactive again, okay? What do you think the first thing I asked them was?
Are you still using the methods?
Are you still at are you still at 127?
Yeah.
Guess what their answer was?
No.
No. They dropped it to 90, okay? So what happened is, dog was doing better because of the 127 corrections.
Yeah.
They do the training, whatever. I don't see it for 2 to 3 months. Because they're seeing progress, they go, maybe we don't need 127 anymore. So they drop it down, okay? But then the dog learns we're not at 127 anymore. We're at 90 now. So then the behaviors, little by little, start to come back, right?
Yeah.
But they don't think to come back to 127 because they were thinking, but she was doing so well.
Yeah.
So when I come back to review or catch up on how things are going, I already know it's because you dropped the number. Right. So I told them, I said, the reason why your dog was doing well was because you were using the number she needed, right? But obviously, as a human, we don't like to think that we're correcting our dog at such a high number, right? It's an emotional thing.
Yeah.
I said, in the moment you dipped it, she realized that, and that's why the behaviors, she started to test them again.
Yeah.
And then I said, all you need to do is go right back to where you were, and the behavior is going to stop again, okay? Because that's the deterrent. So if we take, for example, the speeding cameras, right? It's a $100 fine if you run a red light camera. But imagine if that fine was like $1,000 or $10,000. Do you think people would run the red lights?
No.
No. No one wants to spend $1,000 just for running a red light.
Yeah, yeah.
$100, we don't want to do that either. But the sting is less, so you're more likely to. Like I ran a red light last night.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I had a few red light tickets, but it's been a while. You know.
Yeah.
So then after I ran it, I was like, if that was a red light camera, that would have sucked. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's the same thing for dogs, right? Like there's the $100 fine, the $1,000 fine, and the $10,000 fine,
Yeah.
right? And obviously, one of those is going to greatly reduce their willingness to make that choice again, and that's simply how that works.
Yep.
Okay. The heel stuff is the baseline for the dog because it's not as simple as I go outside, they're reactive, and I just punish them. They also have to know what to do instead, and that's where the heel comes into play. They have to know how to walk with you without pulling and the focus on you. They can still enjoy the world, they can still look around, but if you're the primary concern, the dog across the street no longer matters.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's the theory.
Yeah.
And then, so we always start with heel first. What does it fix? Whatever's left over, we call the residual, and that's usually just through tweaking with the number, right?
Okay.
So sometimes, like the dog could be healing great, 80% of the reactivity is done, but then there's like other barking dogs. Coming around the corner, there's a dog, right? Those are higher intensity situations. So my 35 on the e-collar, which works for everything else at 80%, may not work in these scenarios because they're high stress, right?
Yep.
So then we have to find the number for those situations.
Okay.
And those are things that typically take longer simply because you don't know which dog's going to bark at them. You could walk past a dog and at the very last second they turn around and bark at them, right? You can't plan for when am I going to turn the corner and there's going to be a dog, right?
Yeah.
There are things that just happen in life. So yes, we can address them. They just take longer because they're rarer to come across.
Yeah.
The dog behind the fence that lives 2 doors down, super easy because you're going to see the dog every day. Because of that, it's a faster problem to fix. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
Question on any of that stuff?
Nope, I don't think so.
Let me think here. When it comes to like the boarding and daycare stuff, that I'm not worried about. Dog reactivity is the easiest thing.
Yeah.
Okay. The only time there's
Because you don't, like, if they're reactive, obviously they don't go into like a play group together or anything like.
If they're social.
Yeah.
So dog reactive doesn't mean antisocial. You're an example of that, right?
Yeah.
You said outside he sees dogs, he's reactive, but if you give him time, he will warm up to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So I see that, I'm like, okay, then we see what he does here.
Yeah.
Right. I've had some dogs that were the same as yours, and it took them like a couple of months of coming 2 to 3 times a week before they finally opened up and like trusted the dogs and began to socialize. Usually in smaller groups. I've had other dogs that were similar, and then just because of the environment, never became social.
Right.
They would be social with the owner, similar to you, but when they came here, because they're away from the owner, or just the environmental difference, for whatever reason, they don't become social.
Yeah.
Every case is different.
Yeah.
But they still get to do stuff.
Okay.
So we do duration work where a dog goes to a bed. So if you look here, the dogs are cleared out. But in this camera here, in this TV, you see these dog beds?
Oh, yeah.
Typically, there's dogs on them.
Yeah.
We have treadmills here. And over here is where our playpen is. You can see the gate. We have two
Yeah.
playpens. So for example, dogs will be playing, other dogs will be on the mat, dogs will be on the treadmill, and he's just hanging out. Okay, and he's like, okay, like I'm being calm and I'm existing with other dogs and everything's fine. If he does well on treadmill, he gets to do treadmill, so he also gets that physical activity. We don't charge extra for it. It's just a part of our day-to-day. If we know, like we start to pair him off with dogs, we usually start with females, with the males and stuff like that to see how they do. We do smaller groups first.
Okay.
Okay. If we see he's tolerating well, or if he just hangs out, you know, little by little, we might expand him to a bigger group.
Yeah.
If he's like, nope, I'm good with 2 to 3 females, then we go, okay, we know he's good with 2 to 3 females, and then he doesn't go into a bigger group.
Yeah.
Okay. If we get a dog that just doesn't vibe with the other dogs or stressed out and just doesn't want to socialize here, then we have the ISO pen.
Okay.
And the ISO pen sees everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're not secluded.
Right.
It's the ISO pen because they're by themselves, but
Yeah.
other places ISO means like completely
Yeah,
separated.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
we don't do that here.
Yeah.
We want the dog to see life.
McLovin, come here.
To see like, oh, there's dogs here and I can see them and I don't have to bark at them.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Let's say he did become reactive and you've done training with us. We would correct them for the reactivity just like you would correct them for the reactivity. Like
Yep.
we have the same rules.
Okay.
So what the clients like is that when they drop their dogs off here, we're reinforcing everything, right? If something comes up behaviorally, we correct
Yeah,
it.
that was a big appeal for me, is like just the training component while they're boarding, because
Yeah.
I do feel like, yeah, he comes back from like well, I'm not taking the there anymore, but the other place he would come back and just be a bit of a wreck in terms of like how he walked on leash and stuff like that.
Yeah, gotcha.
So
yeah, we reinforce everything. We don't go out our way for stuff in the sense of like if a dog resource guards, we won't create resource guarding, right?
Yeah.
That's something if you wanted, you could tack on training sessions for.
yeah,
We also don't do the toys things here. One, because we don't want to lose toys. Like if people
good.
Bring toys,
Yeah, no,
like, it
that's
happens.
great news for me.
Yeah, but also because fights can happen.
Yeah.
So the groups are really just dogs coexisting.
Okay.
If a client wants to send a treat with their dog, like when they're boarding and stuff, like they only get it in their kennel.
Yeah.
And then we take away after a period of time, like if dogs are going to be
Perfect.
moved,
Yeah.
because some dogs
So
will
that's
guard
the
the
one
kennel.
thing that he will go after a dog for, is toys and treats.
Sure. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
But that's why we don't do that stuff.
Yeah.
We don't do beds either,
Okay.
because some dogs
Chew them.
chew them and ingest them.
Yeah. So
When
you
I-
just do like the cots, or how
Yeah,
does
so
it
the
work?
Kuranda beds, we offer those here.
Yeah.
They're an additional add-on. It's $5 a night or $25 for a week.
Yeah.
So like if you're here for 2 weeks and you want to upgrade them with a Kuranda bed,
Yeah.
you could. Those are chew-proof, which is why
He
I
has
only.
one of those too. Yeah. He
Yeah,
hasn't
yeah.
tried to chew that.
But that's why we use those, and we have the antimicrobial mats or whatever, because obviously dogs use them all the time. But we don't take any personal belongings outside of a leash, collar,
Yeah.
food, or whatever. We don't want to lose anything. We don't want the dog to ingest anything, chew anything, stuff
Yeah.
like that. A lot of that's just due to boredom or stress. Before I started my facility, I did home to home for 10 years. So I've been at brick and mortar for 5 years roughly.
Okay.
Is a lot of clients gave me stories from their dog daycare or their boarding place. And one of them was the dog had ingested the foam from the bed and had to have that same surgery with the intestine removed.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Because clients have always asked, why don't you accept beds? I'm like, because of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we do turn off the lights at some point and go to sleep. And if a dog chews a bed overnight, like we don't want to come in.
Yeah. 100%.
And then, we have an emergency situation. So,
Yeah.
question on any of that stuff?
No, I don't think so. Super clear.
Yeah, dog reactivity is never a problem. It's only when we get human aggression where we have to be a bit more cautious,
Yeah.
because obviously humans have to handle the dogs.
Yeah.
We have not had a dog that we cannot provide care for. Okay, the only time that we cannot have a dog here is because of the owner. Like we've had human aggressive dogs where I'll tell the owner, we have to keep this dog muzzled until we get them to the point where the staff trust them. I might unmuzzle the dog, but I've been doing this for 15 years, but not all my staff has been doing this for 15 years, right?
Right.
And that's usually where we start to butt heads.
Yeah.
So then I go, well, if we can't keep a muzzle on your dog and safely handle them, because I'm not always here, then this is a dog that we cannot provide care for.
Yep.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Never had one issue with him with humans, so he loves people.
I like him. He's got a little personality on him.
And I have, what's funny is I have cats, and like, well, so I shouldn't say he loves the cats, but the cats love him and they snuggle with him and he's not reactive at all to the cats.
Nice, nice.
So.
For dogs that have trained with us, they are welcome to use our boarding services at any point.
Okay.
Dogs who have not trained with us are required to do daycare once a week.
Okay.
Okay. We used to be more lenient on that, but then we had dogs coming out of the woodwork and they were chewing up stuff. So I was like, no, you guys, we have to see you once a week. But if we train them, because if we can correct them if needed,
Yeah.
they're not required. They're welcome to do daycare, but not required to.
Yep.
One thing that we've done recently is with the fecals, is if we see them once every 3 months, we're good. Okay. But if it's been longer than 3 months, we would require a new fecal.
Okay.
So like if he came for Christmas and then we didn't see him until like
Yeah.
4th of July, we would ask you for a new fecal.
Okay.
Just because we've seen some stuff happen.
Yeah, no.
Where
of
dogs
course.
would show up and they like had an old fecal and we're like, this dog's got worms.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Yeah.
So it used to be once a month, but then some clients are kind of pushing back like, hey, this seems kind of excessive. And I was like, all right, we'll do 3 months. If we don't see your dog in a season, we're going to need a new fecal.
Yeah.
Okay. But if
Okay.
we see them regularly, like in the daycare or whatever, or at least semi-regularly,
Yeah.
we see the poops all the time. We can tell that there's possibly something wrong.
Yeah.
And then we'll email like, hey, like he's had some, diarrhea. And you're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, we have noticed that. I'm like, we suggest probably getting a new fecal
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there might be some giardia or whatever.
Okay.
As long as the vaccinations are up to date, we're good. If
Yeah.
because of his age, he's not getting all of them, we do accept like the titer tests, or like if you have a note from your vet that says he's not getting X shot because
Yeah.
of X reaction, we just need something that when we get our random audits from the city,
Yeah.
we can show them, well, this dog doesn't have a rabies because of
Yeah.
this.
Okay.
That's all we care about.
Yep.
My Pittie, she had a negative reaction to vaccines when she was 8 years old. She had facial paralysis. They went from one side to another
wow.
and some bunch of other stuff. So she stopped getting vaccinated. But she's had her tests, her titer tests, and she's good.
Yeah.
So that's just one thing that we do
Yeah. He's
understand.
I think he's due for his Bordetella right now, but otherwise he's normally completely up to date.
Got it. Yep. Any other questions?
I don't think so. No, and like when you're doing positive reinforcement, what does that look like? Is it like treats, toy play? Like how do you?
With the training or like
Yeah.
daycare? So with training, I don't use positive reinforcement a whole ton.
Okay.
Okay. Reason is, it's usually a lot for the client to think about.
Yeah.
You have the dog, you have the behavior, you have the remote, you have
Yeah.
the food.
Got
right?
it.
So if we add in food, it would be probably 3 to 4 lessons in if we're doing in person.
Got it.
Okay. Because at that point you have enough of a grasp on everything that I go, now we can add in food and now it would have value. So I'm not
Okay,
against
clear.
food. I just go, it's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, and I'm like all the training I've done. It's always blows my mind how hard it is to like focus and like manage everything. So yeah.
That's why I've cut out all the excess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
And then food is great as additional information, but it's not required to stop the behaviors.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like for humans, we're not rewarded for good behavior. It's just expected we don't break the law.
Yeah.
If you break the law, there's a
Yeah.
consequence, right?
Fair.
Now obedience, because obedience would be unnatural, sit, come, whatever. It would still be remote only or whatever training tools we're using, and then we could add in food after. Because again, you have a grasp on everything.
Yep. Okay.
If we're doing like a board and train type option, I do try food. A lot of times because of the stress of the new environment, plus the stress of the training, the dog turns away the food.
Yeah.
So like the Roddy, they sent us very high quality treats, and she's like 40-60, 40 yes, 60 no in terms of the treats, just because she's already stressed about being here.
Yeah.
And then the training on top of it.
Okay.
But little by little, she's getting more comfortable because she is accepting more and more
Yeah.
treats, but she's still 40-60 at the moment.
Okay.
So, but again, not necessary to get the results.
Yeah.
It's kind of just there as a nice offset for the dog.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Other questions?
I don't think so.
So one thing as FYI, harnesses actually increase reactivity.
Oh.
Okay. I'm not sure if you're aware.
No.
No. So
I've
you
just
have,
always used this one because it helps with pulling.
correct. So you have a front clip harness. A lot of them, they call them like no pull harnesses, which is an oxymoron because harnesses are meant for pulling, right? So the reason why harnesses promote reactivity is animals have this thing called opposition reflex. Are you familiar with that? It's a fancy term for if a dog feels pressure or tension, they want to go against it. So if a dog is pulling forward and you pull back, they pull more forward. You pull left, they pull right. You pull right, they pull left. They want to go against it, okay? This is natural.
Yeah.
What happens with that is it also creates tension and agitation. So a lot of puppies are on harnesses. So we have a friendly, happy-go-lucky puppy, right? And then they see a dog and they want to say hi. But because it's a puppy, we tend to no, right? Because they have bad manners or like vaccination stuff or whatever. So now the puppy's pulling, right? And you've got counter tension, and now the puppy starts to get frustrated because all they want to do is say hi.
Yeah.
Right? But they can't, so that creates the frustration.
Right.
And then we do that time after time, day after day, month after month. So now that friendly puppy at 2 months becomes agitated, frustrated, and then aggressive over the course of time. Because they start to associate the negative tension, right, to the dog. And then over the time, the client is making the dog potentially aggressive. In protection training, which is when we train dogs to attack on command, we use harnesses. Okay, we have a person, the harness is clipped on the back.
Yeah.
You have the person holding the dog like this. You have the antagonizer.
Yeah.
Right? Acting suspiciously, threatening to the dog to start to create that suspicion, growling, right, tension, and we're pulling back to create the frustration because now the dog's like, hey, I want to get to you now, right? So then they start lunging. We want nothing inhibiting the throat, which is also why we use the harness. And then in time, we start to reward them by releasing the tension to allow them to go after the target, okay? So that's what people are doing, but with dogs.
Got it.
You see
Okay.
that?
I'm very open not to use a harness. It's been the only thing that
Correct.
stops them from pulling.
Correct.
So.
Yeah. And this is just like FYI for you.
Yeah.
Should you move forward with the training, we would remove it. All you would need is your flat collar, your e-collar, potentially a prong collar, but I usually start without it.
Yeah.
And then this would be a thing of the past.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's just like FYI for you.
I think he's thinking those are dogs. Potentially.
Questions on that?
Nope.
So the next thing would be, most common question I get is like, when does the e-collar go away?
Does what?
When does the e-collar go away? In my book, when you need it, it doesn't.
Okay.
So this means if you're going to go on a walk, you need it, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't account for the world and the
Yeah,
environment.
yeah.
It's present, but you're not having to use it all the time.
Yeah.
Okay? Is why I try to remind people. Here, I'll help you, buddy. Put these away. There you go. You scared them away. When the training is done correctly, you shouldn't be doing this all the time. If I get a client that's using this all the time, even if it's 2 times on a 30-minute walk, I'll tell them that's 2 times too many.
Yeah.
That tells me you're doing something incorrectly.
Yeah.
Almost always we're too low on the collar. Okay? Because once you drive that point home, the dog's like, all right, I'm just not going to bark at dogs. I'm going to walk at your side, this and that. I don't need a reminder.
Yeah.
But because we use the appropriate number.
Yeah.
Okay? So when people come over, if he's great, you don't need it, right? If you're going to a friend's house and he's great there, you don't need it. Going to a restaurant where there's going to be other dogs, you need it, right? If he's going to be off leash at the park, you need it.
Yeah.
So it's really just based upon whether or not what's going on in the environment, and you go, there's things that I can't control, so I'll need it.
Got it.
But you shouldn't always be actively using it.
Makes sense.
Okay, it's simply present. So it's kind of like with people. If we're on the expressway, almost everybody speeds, and then they see a squad car, and then everybody slows down, right? And then everybody passes a squad car, and we all just speed up like in unison, right? It's the same thing. I tell clients it's like a cop on a collar.
Yeah.
The presence of it lets the dog know there's threat of consequence, right? Which then changes how the dog behaves.
Yeah.
This is based upon opportunistic behavior. All animals do it. If you can get away with something, it's kind of like, why not?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And speeding would be like the most
Yeah,
common thing.
100%.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
It has nothing to do with my skills as a trainer or anything like that. I just tell everybody, like, this is just the way of the world.
Yeah.
Okay?
Makes sense.
Question on any of that stuff?
Nope.
Now, I talked about in-person training. Were you trying to do a board and train, or what was your...
I'd like to do the in-person
wanna do
training.
in-person?
Yeah.
It's the better option. You learn a lot more because you're doing all the work yourself. Okay. With the board and train, you're still going to get the same progress, but all the training's tied to us.
Right.
I then have to transfer it to you, and then you have to catch up to your dog's training. So there's always going to be a delay there.
Yeah.
Okay? Whereas if you do the training yourself, you and him are learning at the same
Yeah, exactly.
time. there's going to be failures and then there's going to be successes, right? And you learn obviously from the failures.
Yeah.
And then I learned too, because then you come back and like, hey, Jesse, you know, we had an incident where he turned the corner, dog started barking, he started barking, it went to 65. It was a shit show, right? Didn't work. I go, no problem. I now have learned in that moment, you're going to need more than 65, right? And there might be a couple other things that I can educate you on to help have a greater rate of success, right? Until you finally get him like, okay, cool. If that happens, I'm not worried about it anymore. You know, it's all just part of the process. So obviously goals would be leash reactivity. Is the resource guarding thing something you'd like to cover?
I mean, that would be great. Just because yeah, I mean, that would be great if we could cover that because like I said, my family has a bunch of dogs, so it's always something that like we have to just be really mindful of. There are no toys around, but even like if, you know, my dad is like cooking in the kitchen and a crumb falls, we have to be like super sensitive about,
Okay, we can cover that, it's not a problem.
Yep.
There's limitations to it in the sense of like, let's say you got your family's hanging out, he wanders off, he finds a bone somebody dropped that nobody knew about, and the other dog go for the bone because it's unsupervised. Probably going to see something, right?
100%.
But there's a lot of things that we can do. Like I teach default things on the ground are not yours to prevent that from happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like, let's say, you know, your dad dropped something in the kitchen, he sees it, instead of running to it, he's like, I'm going to go the other way. That we can do. Okay. There's also more,
he's not, by the way, he never resource guards with people. It's just with dogs.
And there's also like he has an object, you tell him to drop it, he releases it.
He's got the best drop it ever.
Good.
So that's the one thing I've done well on.
Excellent. So then the other stuff we can tackle. It's easy. It's just a matter of putting in the reps to get it done. Okay. If he's going to be doing any kind of daycare boarding, I'd suggest stationary control with the place command, because that's one of the things that we do here. Okay.
He's got a good stay. That's another thing I've done.
What's the longest he'll hold for?
I mean, I haven't tested it, to be honest.
Okay.
I just do it around the house as like part of training.
I got you. Just like kind of
like I'll go to a different room and like, you know, come back and release him. That kind of thing.
So we do extended.
But I don't think my method would work if like there was a dog over there. Do you know what I mean?
So that's what I'm talking about. Is like these either high stress situations or there's more distractions going on. Plus duration. So like when we're doing our boarding trains, for example, they do at minimum 2-hour sessions a day.
Oh, wow.
Where they're just there and then stuff is going on. In some cases, I do 2 to 4 hours. So if I have an anxiety case, a lot of times I do 2 4-hour sessions. Because sitting still for a long period of time is difficult for anxious dogs. So that's why I do that, you know. And then for you, you know, when he comes here, it's another activity he gets to do. But then also, like if you want to go somewhere like a restaurant where there's going to be dogs present, whatever, that's the command that you'd be utilizing. Okay. Recall?
His recall, like, no, it's not great.
Okay. So in my opinion, every dog should have a reliable recall. It's probably one of the most important commands, right next to heel, right? So that gives us heel, place, come. Sit, down, and stay are kind of superficial. Place essentially does what sit and down do. It's just a little bit more lenient, right? Because it's just go to the object, sit, stand, lay down, chew it a bone, put it away, I don't care. Just don't come off, right? But if you wanted to get all his commands down, we could. But I look at it as like he's 10 years old. Just kind of covering the essentials, which would be recall, heel,
I agree.
place.
Agreed.
So I would put you probably like around the 9-week program. Okay. Heel, 2 classes, potentially a third on the reactivity. Okay. If his reactivity ends up being, is this what we saw here, his reactivity, or is it worse?
Oh, worse.
It's worse.
Yeah. That was kind of like, I think that's a dog. I'm curious. It might be a toy.
So then, if we think it's going to be worse, right? Then I go, okay, there might be a class where we tackle the reactivity directly, right? That's what we're going to focus on for the class. If that happens, generally what I do is once we hit that class, I'll tell you, take 2 weeks to rinse and repeat. In a week, shoot me an email, okay? Give me an update. If you feel like you're making progress, good. If you feel like you're not making progress, then I don't see you till class 4. I do email exchanges, and I go, do this next, do this next, do this next, okay? Let's say for whatever reason, I've run you through the gauntlet, right? You're like, hey, Jesse, he's still being reactive. I go, okay, this is more difficult than I thought.
Yeah.
Let's do an in-person, and we might be at the park or something.
Yeah.
Right, where I'm like, I need to see this to see what's going on. Because it's very rare that a client will be like max power and it's not having an effect on the dog, okay? I've had this happen, it's very rare. I don't think it's gonna happen. It's only happened 5 times in 15 years.
Yeah.
Where some dogs, the reactivity was so intense or aggression was so intense,
Come here.
they needed 2 collars.
Yeah.
Okay. A couple of them were Pitties. The other ones were 150-pound dogs. So it made sense that they're large, big dogs.
Yeah.
Okay. But otherwise, pretty much we're gonna get it done.
Yeah.
Once you understand how to correct reactivity, it's just what number is gonna work.
Right.
Okay. But if we end up hitting some kind of wall for whatever reason, then I go, okay, now let's have that 4th class so I can figure out what's going on because this doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if I see you week after week after week, just going through these little motions, it's really just a waste of your time and money, right? When I know I can just get it done via email 98% of the time.
Yeah.
And then if not, then we use a class to see what's going on.
Okay.
But I anticipate potentially, so we have 2 on heel, 1 on recall, I'm sorry, reactivity, place command,
Yep.
recall, that's 5 now, resource guarding. Okay, it's also gonna take a couple of classes. Sometimes we do the exercises and then the dog is like, I want nothing to do with this. This happens a lot because of the consequence. It's not a big deal. It just means it's gonna take longer for us to get all the reps in.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we still have classes 8 and 9 in case reactivity for whatever reason is more difficult. Or like, let's say it's like everything's doing great. And you're like, okay, everything's awesome. His recall's good. His heel's good. His reactivity is good. His pace is good. Resource guarding, we're making progress, right? And we have 2 classes left over. I could either show you how to advance your training, the 3 things that he knows. Everything can technically be built to an off-leash level. The only command that needs to be off-leash is recall. Otherwise, it's pointless, right? So dog, sit, stay down, come place heel. All of that can be done off-leash.
Yeah.
The only command that matters is recall, okay? But I do get some clients that want to advance like their heel to be an off-leash heel or whatever. So if you go to a preserve that allows dogs, whatever, and he can be off-leash and you can recall him and heel him off-leash. And then when it's open again, you can give him freedom again.
Yeah.
That's usually where people use it. Otherwise, if we hit class 7 and you're like, hey, I'm very happy. I got all the stuff I wanted to get done. I don't think I need these 2 classes or I want to pocket a class. You could pocket a class and then convert one into credit and then use it towards a boarding stay.
Okay, cool.
Like, yeah. It happens where a client gets like a bunch of classes and they do really good with the homework. They make a ton of progress and we're like, what else is there to do?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that I'm like, I have no problem doing that.
Yeah.
It's just service for service, so no issue.
Yep.
And then as long as he has his stuff down, he still meets our requirement for being trained with us.
Okay.
So, okay.
Great.
Question on any of that?
Nope, I don't think so.
The collar I'd recommend is the Dr. Black Edition, and Tina will send you the information.
Okay.
If you get it through us, it is 10% off.
Okay.
Which reminds me, as a training client or a daycare client, you do get 10% off all our retail.
Okay.
Okay, so if he's on a specific food or whatever, we give 10% off. If we happen to carry it, we do also do custom orders for some clients. So we have a client who buys a very expensive food in bulk.
Yeah.
So we buy it for her, and then she just gets it when she needs it. She just gets another 10% off. But you get your training also, training retail also falls into that 10% off as well.
Okay.
If something happens to the collar, like if it happens to be a dud because it is, technology.
Yeah.
If it's within a month, it's not a problem. I can just swap it out. I'll deal with it myself.
Okay.
After that, if there's an issue, you can send it to Dogdra. It does come with a 1-year warranty.
Yeah.
However, you'll be left without your tools for a bit. So for our clients that have purchased a collar through us, we do provide them with a free loaner for the first time. Okay. So then you're not left with nothing if you have to ship it out.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
It's very rare. I check our tool, our equipment, and test them out and everything. Make sure that they're working well. I don't use them. I just make sure that they're working and functioning. But that's another thing that we do to help our clients who get their training collars through us. Okay. It's meant for a 70-pound dog and over. He's probably a 50-ish, 60-ish pound guy.
Since his surgery, probably more like 50 now. Yeah.
It's perfectly safe to use. I could put on my 8-pound Chihuahua. It just means we get more from less.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Anytime I'm dealing with a power breed or a Pittie, I've learned to just go for the higher powered collar. I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
It's a rechargeable battery, fully waterproof, both the transmitter and the receiver. They last for years. My first collars that I got lasted me about 10 years before I had to finally retire them and buy a new system. They do last a very long time. The most common thing we do see is the battery does give because it's a rechargeable lithium battery.
Yeah.
I can replace it here for $35, and or you can go on doctor.com, buy them for $20, whatever they cost. Do it yourself. It's fairly straightforward. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions, concerns?
No, I guess that like you'll just give a breakdown in terms of like cost.
Correct.
Yeah.
So Tina will follow up.
Okay.
So I usually email her and I give her my recommendations.
Okay.
And then she follows up with you and she gives you breakdown of costs and everything like that. And then right now, because we're just going into the spring season, I train here. Where we train doesn't matter to the training. Okay. So clients a lot of times worry like, well, Jesse, if we train inside, am I still going to fix the reactivity outside? I go, yes.
Yeah.
Because you just need to adjust your number.
Right.
What's nice about training outside is that you're training in a, real world environment, so to speak, right? So in the summertime, or once we pass the rainy season, I do train out of Oz Park. Okay. Are you familiar with Oz? Yep, in Lincoln Park.
I live in Lincoln Park.
Oh, nice. Busiest park in Chicago. Okay. Got dogs, rollerbladers, skateboarders, kids, families, baseball games. There's jazz bands that show up and play. It's the busiest park in Chicago. Is where I train during the summertime. Okay. So it's nice because you're in the thick of it. Yeah. Right. So if it becomes reactive, we work through it real time. Okay. And then you're just kind of training while all this stuff is going on. So it's really just having the ability to train in the environment, but it's not necessary to achieve the results for the reactivity. Okay. Okay. So if you're like, I'd rather start sooner, I'll be training here. If you're like, I don't mind waiting for a bit, you could always book for the summertime. I just can't give a date on when the rain's gonna stop. Yeah. Because we've had that happen where a client will book it and it's still raining for whatever. Yeah. Okay. So then things get pushed out a little bit. Okay. But it doesn't matter, honestly. Okay. And you can, chances are, if you do like the 9 week, we're gonna hit the summer anyways. So we might be here in the beginning, and then towards the end of it, it's like now we're at Oz Park. So. Got it. Okay. Anything else?
Don't think so. And to start boarding, I assume he has to finish the training.
Yeah, so he would be, if you wanted to do boarding, you could start the eval thing and everything, and like he'd be like a regular daycare dog or what have you. And then once he gets far enough along, I go, we're good. And then he can forego the daycare stuff. Okay. The eval is a 3-day process. It doesn't have to be consecutive. You could do 1 day, 1 week, 1 day, another week. It's to help acclimate him here. Yeah. It's a very slow process.
The eval is different from the training?
Correct. Okay. So the evaluation is to get him set up here. Okay. With the daycare facility. Got it. Okay. To get him acclimated. Yeah. After he's completed the eval, no dog ever fails the eval. Again, it's just the owner. Yeah. But we'll let you know, like, yeah, he did take a couple of females, so it's us just kind of easing him in. Okay? Yeah. And then he does daycare once a week. Okay. And then once training starts and everything, and he's far enough along, and I'm like, okay, your dog is good. Then I go, no need to do the daycare anymore. Okay. Okay.
So while we're doing the training, he has to do the boarding?
Are you trying to do the boarding anytime soon?
I mean, I travel a lot for work, but I mean, I have other options in the meantime. But so I mean, I would like to, but I can hold off.
Sure. So.
But I would do, honestly, the idea of boarding is kind of interesting too. So.
The board and train.
No, not the board and train, but like doing like maybe 1 day a week just to kind of test it out.
Oh, like daycare?
Daycare. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No worries. Yeah. Yeah. So if, like, let's say you needed to board him in 2 months, right? And we're not going to be far enough along in the training for him to forego. It's the eval completed, and then 1 month of daycare once a week. Yeah. And then we accept the dog into our boarding. Yeah. It's really to help filter out people from just making us do all this work and then never coming back. Yeah, 100%. Does that make sense? Yep. Because it has happened in the past when I first opened my brick and mortar, and I'm like, this sucks. Like, we did all this work for nothing, So it's really just kind of filter out who's serious and who's not. And then they can board for the first time. Okay. And then as long as we see him, and then and it really just depends on when your travel schedule is and how his training is going and everything like that. That at some point I go, we're good. Yeah. And then you're fine to just board him. Okay. Okay. Cool. So that's a separate process. He'd need a new recent fecal
Yep.
for that. We don't, even if it was 2 months ago, technically it's recent.
I'll get him one, yeah, because he's, like I said, he's due for his Bordetella, so I'll drop a sample off then.
We do also offer transport services. You said
Okay.
you're in Lincoln Park?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do Lakeview, Lincoln Park, Logan Square from where we used to be, okay? So we do also offer transport for like
nice.
the eval dogs or whatever.
Okay.
What we would do, which would most likely just be a yes from you, is we go, okay, he hasn't started his training yet, but as long as we can correct him for the barking, we're good.
Yep.
That's the only thing that's really an issue because we don't want a dog barking in the van for the hour or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So as long as we have the thumbs up on that, it's not an issue. He can be on transport. And then even if the training isn't going to start till after, like I can still address things in the meantime. Like correcting behavior is not a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Other questions?
No, I don't think so.
That's pretty much it. We covered all the points. You're already kind of familiar with the e-collar technology, which is the biggest question for people because of what they think it is versus what it actually is.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to Tina. If you know you're like, yep, sign me up. If you want to expedite the process, you can turn around and email her and say, hey, Tina, sign me up. I want the 9-week program.
Yeah.
You could technically do the 6-class program as well. I'm cutting off the stuff that I'm not sure that we can get to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if the reactivity takes 3 classes, now we only have 3 classes left over.
Yeah.
So it's better to do a little bit longer. Know we have the time if needed. And at the end of the day, if we get things done in the 7 classes and you have 2 left over, you can just always convert it to credit.
Got it.
So you're not going to lose out on that value.
And I can, through Tina, can organize the eval as well?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. She may forward you to Maria, but she can at least get you started.
Okay.
So Tina's my mom.
Oh, okay.
She handles my personal calendar.
Yeah.
And then Maria's my aunt. And she's here at the facility. And she handles booking evals, board and trains, things like that.
Got it.
Sometimes you might get an email from Elizabeth. That's my wife.
Okay.
So it's a little family business. But she can at least get you started.
Yep.
We do Ginger for our software.
Yeah.
Which is the boarding.
I'm familiar with it.
So she'll send you the Ginger link or whatever to create the profile. You can put all your things there.
Okay.
And then for the boarding reservation, we have to book your first one.
Yeah.
And then after your first one's completed, then you can book on your end.
Ginger.
For the, through Ginger. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Walk-ins are welcome. You don't have to worry about, oh, will they have space for my dog? We have 18,000 square feet of space.
Yeah.
We have plenty of space for dogs. Okay. I hope we get to the point where we're just full. But if that happened, we could just open up a kennel and set it up, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Because we do 4x6 foot kennels.
Okay.
Like the daycare kennels, what have you. But we also have wire crate kennels too, in case that ever happened. We can always just set them up. But it's not an issue. Okay?
Awesome. And how much, like when they board with you, how much do they go out?
To go potty?
Yeah.
So we do hourly rotations.
Okay.
We have an outside back lot where we can take dogs to go potty, allow them to just potty during playtime or what have you.
Okay.
So every hour in the hour, dogs are moving around. So let's say he gets here at 8 o'clock, right? Let's say a rotation's just being started. He might go straight to place. Okay, so then he's going to do that from 8 to 9. And then from 9 to 10, he might do treadmill time. And then from 10 to 11, he might do a small group play or he might do ISO time, right?
Okay.
Then he goes back to his kennel for an hour.
Okay.
An hour later, it starts all over again.
Okay.
We don't do really more than 1 session for treadmill for a dog. 1 to not burn out our treadmills.
Yeah.
But then also with the activity of everything else, it's plenty.
Okay.
But then he gets to do place. And then also group player, depends on how he does with that stuff. If it's slower, then dogs might do a longer place. We keep things busy. And then we typically around 7 o'clock, we start to slow down, put the dogs in the kennels, they eat dinner, they come back out for one more outing before bed, and then they go to their kennels for the night.
Okay.
And then we're back in the next morning, 6 o'clock, Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock, Saturday and Sunday.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a lot of activity.
Yeah.
Older guys, we see how they do. If he's trucking along, we let him do it. But if we start to see him slowing down or anything, we'll let you know.
Okay.
We have a dog now that can't do treadmill anymore because he's just old.
Yeah.
So, but he looks like he's full of life. So I think he'll be fine. He's good.
Actually the laziest dog in the world. So he probably sleeps like 90% of the day.
Sure.
Not super motivated for walks or anything. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to add on services, we do add-on walks.
Okay.
And or training sessions.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. People usually do bundles and stuff like that.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
So if there's anything you may have forgotten to ask, feel free to ping Tina. If it
Okay.
pertains to me, she'll ask me and I'll get back to her and she'll send it to
Okay.
you. Otherwise, pretty straightforward. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Great. Sounds good.
Yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, thank you.
I like him. He's got a good little personality.